Tonight, we're looking at the key takeaways from the Commanders' loss to the Green Bay Packers. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss against the Packers. And so I usually like to start with just the overall theme before we jump into the numbers. And so, look, I think that the major theme out of this game is just that this was a tough loss for the Washington Commanders, and not just because they lost to the Packers, but it is also to just what happened to the players that played in this game. Because when you look at the injuries that piled up in this one, this is huge because Noah Brown, he was out due to a quad. You had Austin Eckler, who went down on a non-contact injury. You had Dietrich Wise Jr., he was carted off. You had John Bates, who went out due to a groin. And then it looked like towards the end of the game, Jaden Daniels got a little banged up. He was able to continue on, so that's a good sign. But, man, not only did the Commanders lose the game, they also might have lost some key players. And so I just think that this is something to definitely monitor. Look, we know that the NFL season, it is a marathon and it is not a sprint. And it looks like that the challenge for the Commanders is going to start very early because, if these players are set to really miss extended time, we're going to find out just how deep this football team is. We're also going to find out just if these additions that Adam Peters got can now help this team kind of ride the storm here early with the injuries. And so we'll be talking about that as we get some updates. And so I think that that's the first key theme out of this one. Next, just looking at the offense and just really just the overall theme there, the Commanders weren't able to take advantage of some good fields. I think that when you look at the field position, the Commanders really had the favorable fields as far as, the short fields and things like that to drive. They just couldn't take advantage of that because Green Bay really had all the momentum. Their defense was flying around. They got to Jaden Daniels and sacked him. And just really, this offense never got into rhythm. And so I think the next theme out of this is just on the Packers side of things. Their offense was able to do what they needed to. And so not taking anything away from the defense, because I do believe the Commanders' defense really hung in there as much as possible. But, man, the Packers continued to get yards, and they were making some big plays. In fact, in the third quarter, at one point in time, I believe it was 342 total yards to 92 total yards. And so the Packers were able to just get to where they needed to throughout this football game. And so that's the overall themes to this one. Now I wanted to go ahead and jump into the numbers and some of the things that really stood out. So I think that the first key takeaway as far as looking at the numbers, it was the performance on the ground for the Packers. And so, look, when you look in comparison, you see that, the Packers had 135 yards to the Commanders' 51 yards. And I think that really a key to success for the Commanders is running the football. I think that that is definitely, part of this team's identity. And they just really couldn't get things going. And the Packers, I mean, it's not like that they necessarily, had huge gains out there with Josh Jacobs, but they just kept pounding and they were able to get some timely big plays. But I do think that the defense really hung in there, especially when you look at the averages here, because for Josh Jacobs, even though he did get a touchdown, he had the 84 yards on 23 carries. 3.7 was his average, and so that was slightly up from the season opener. And I thought that if the Commanders could really hold him to about 3.4 to 3.5, they'd really have a chance to take down the Packers today. And so they were right there with him. But then you just had some big runs from Savion Williams, who had 2 carries for 24 yards. He had a 12-yard average. And then you also had Matthew Golden that had 15 yards on 2 carries. He had a 7.5 average. And then with Jordan Love, it's not like that he ran a lot with his 3 carries for 12 yards, but when he did run, they were big runs. And so, I just think that that was really the difference. And then when you look at the Commanders, Commanders on their side of the ball as far as running it. Jaden Daniels couldn't get loose, 7 carries for 17 yards, 2.4 was his average, 2.1 for Austin Eckler, and that was on 8 carries for 17 yards. And then with Bill, 4 carries for 17 yards, and he had the best average at 4.3, but he never really got a chance to get into rhythm. And I think that the Packers really did a good job as far as really taking the Commanders out of their running game because, well, they were chasing all night long. And so I think that that was the first key number out of this loss. Next, I think when you look at the passing and you just see what Jordan Love and these guys were able to do. And so you see that it was 8.2, the yards per pass compared to the Commanders 3.9. And so 269 to 179. And so if you got a chance to watch this game, it just seemed like Jaden Daniels and this offense really had to work for everything that they got versus the Packers. It seemed like that they continued to hit some big plays. In fact, Jordan Love's favorite target was his tight end, Tucker Kraft. And so many people feel like he's going to have a good year, especially if you've been playing fantasy football. And so he had a very good day today, 6 receptions, 124 yards and a touchdown. And there was one play early on. I think he hit a seam route early in either the first or second quarter. And that was kind of the story of the game with just the way that Jordan Love and these guys were able to kind of connect down the field here. And so he had a big day, and that certainly hurt the Commanders, just not able to stop those big plays down the field. So next, I think the next key takeaway here in this game and just kind of looking at the numbers or whatnot is just you see that the time of possession, again, this kind of goes into what I was talking about before, with the field and stuff like that. It's not like the Commanders had like long fields to really go and just try to get points and get it. It was just more so they couldn't get things going. But then when you had Green Bay on the field, they just kept drives going. They were able to get down to the red zone, obviously more than the Commanders. You see 3 of 4 today. The Commanders were 1 of 1 there in that department. And so you just have the ability to make plays there. Third down efficiency, 5 of 12 for the Packers, 5 of 16 for the Commanders. And so, the Green Bay Packers win there. They got the third downs that they needed. I did like the stop on 4th down. And so, definitely got to give a lot of credit out there to Trey Amos. I think that he made some plays, and he actually went out of the game too with a shoulder for a little bit, but did come back. And so I thought that he looked very good out there for the most part. And so, yeah, man, I mean, it was a tough loss tonight for the Washington Commanders. And look, again, man, I just think that now you go back, you just need to go back to the drawing board. And I think that the first thing for this team is just they really need to get healthy. And so I think that that's point number 1. And then, just looking at really the MVP on the offense tonight, I would probably go ahead and give it to Zach Ertz. I think that Zach Ertz really made some plays, as far as in the receiving game. And so I knew that he was going to have an opportunity tonight because Sam Laporta had really success in week 1 against the Packers. And so you knew that he was going to have some shots. And so 8 targets, he got 6 of those for 64 yards and a touchdown. And so he made plays. I thought that the team really tried to get Terry McLaurin going. So 9 targets. He had 48 yards on 5 receptions tonight. So they tried to get him going a lot more. Deebo Samuel, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 44 yards. He got a touchdown late there. So he continues to get into the end zone for the Washington Commanders. And so that was about it, as far as just really, the playmakers out there for us offensively. And so, like I said, going back to that first point, now if Noah Brown and, Austin Eckler and these players are out, this is where you're going to find out about Jalen Lane. This is where you're going to find out about Luke McCaffrey. This is also, too, where we find out some more about Bill. And then also, too, Chris Rodriguez Jr. Look, he's probably going to have to step up and play a major role. And that is if there's some major injuries there. And so next, I just wanted to shift focus here and look at the defense. And so, like I said before, I think that the defense hung in there for the most part. I just think that maybe we'd be talking a little bit different here if the offense was just able to just kind of get some momentum, keep drives going, get some points and things like that, and just really keep the Packers defense on the field, kind of give this defense some charge, because I do think that they just hung in as long as they possibly could until, just Green Bay was able to just continue to just wear them down like that. So good performance here. I think that this defense is still on the right track. And then lastly, you just got to give the Packers a lot of credit for what they were able to do, on both the pass and the run today. I think that they were much more balanced in this one. In fact, when you look at the breakdowns for the first down, 6 to 14, so 6 rushes, and then the 14 in the passing game. And so, still you would like to see, I think, a little bit more balance as far as running the football, but because they had so much success, I think just passing it, you just really didn't have to worry about that. But anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what your key takeaways were from tonight's loss. Once again, the Washington Commanders fall to the Green Bay Packers 27-18. And like I said, I think that this is a very tough loss, considering that not only did the team lose this, they also have some injuries that are definitely going to be concerning as this team moves forward. So anyway, as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.